Imagine spending 6 years believing in a dream for 2, and discover, at the moment when everything should be a celebration, that this dream was yours alone. Emily Carter was no ordinary woman. She was one of those who carry the world on their backs without complaint. He worked 2 jobs, worked overtime, sold things from his own house, all to pay for her husband's medical school. She believed in him when even he didn't. And each sacrifice came packed with love, faith, and hope that one day he would repay. But that Christmas, everything turned to ashes. What would you do if, after supporting someone for 6 years, you received a divorce petition wrapped as a Christmas gift in return? That's exactly what happened to Emily. She was not only changed, it was planned, used, manipulated. And when the truth came out, it was too late. He was with someone else, a young, pregnant doctor, living on the money she sweated to earn. But this story is not just about betrayal. It's about what comes after. About the bottom of the well that becomes a foundation. About the woman who everyone thought would collapse, but who chose to be reborn. Because there is pain that sinks, and there is pain that wakes up. If you've ever been left silent, if you've sacrificed too much for those who never saw you, or if you still believe that no one comes out unscathed from an injustice, then this story is for you. Not because it will ease your pain, but because it will show you what happens when a wounded woman chooses to become her own healer. Now, take a deep breath, because what you're about to watch, it's not a love story. It's a story of rebirth. Emily Carter has always been the kind of woman who believed in the power of effort. Coming from a modest family on the outskirts of Boston, she grew up among secondhand books and chilly afternoons in public libraries. She was never the prettiest in school, but she was the most determined, and this silent strength accompanied her until adulthood. At almost 50 years old, she carried in her eyes the pride of someone who built everything with her own hands. She worked as an administrative manager of a veterinary clinic, loved animals, and even with her long routines, she always found time to visit her mother in the asylum and take care of her younger sister, Lily, who was facing anxiety crises. His life had a stable, almost predictable rhythm, until he met Daniel Foster. Daniel appeared in her life as a breath of hot air in the middle of snowy January. He was 3 years older, friendly, intelligent, and at the time worked as an attendant at a pharmacy near the hospital where Emily took the rescued dogs. They had spontaneous conversations, exchanged shy smiles, and little by little, he made room in her life with that sweet charm of someone who knows how to listen. Daniel talked about his dreams, and the biggest one was to study medicine. She said that, despite her age, she still believed that she could help people, that she wanted to save lives. Emily was enchanted. For the first time in years, she felt admired, important. He said, "You inspire me to be better." And she believed. It was during a simple dinner by the light of improvised candles on a blackout night that he made the most important request. He wanted to try to get into medical school, but he had no way to support himself. Emily hesitated. Her savings barely covered emergencies. She was still helping her sister, and she had a loan on her car. But his gaze, so full of hope, made her make a decision. He proposed an emotional agreement. She would work 2 jobs, cut back on superfluities, and he would dedicate himself exclusively to his studies. "It's going to be worth it, Emily. When I graduate, everything will change." She dove headlong into the promise. She asked for overtime, started pet sitting at night, and even sold some old jewelry to pay for the initial tuition. The first winter was tough, knee-deep days of snow, handing out clinic flyers at night, sleeping 3 hours a day. But Emily clung to the idea that it was for love. It was a phase. Daniel needed her, and that belief fueled every step she took in that icy city. Boston, with its streets lit by old streetlights and windows framed by snowy pines, became a constant scene of Emily's struggles. The traditional neighborhood seemed to freeze in time, while her life ran at a frenetic pace. She passed in front of the university where Daniel studied and smiled, proudly. He knew he was building something, even if no one saw it. Sometimes he would stop at a street cafe, have a hot tea and dream. In a few years, he will be a doctor, we will have our house, who knows children. Daniel, for his part, seemed grateful. He arrived late, tired, but he embraced her tenderly. She told stories from class, laughed at her classmates, and always said, "You're my foundation, Emily." On her birthdays, he made a point of writing letters. Nothing very elaborate, but always with sweet words. Emily clung to these moments tightly. When exhaustion threatened to overcome her, she reread the notes and took a deep breath. It will pass. Soon everything will be better. In the third year, Emily almost lost her job because of fatigue. He fell asleep during an important appointment at the clinic. But even so, he refused to give up. Daniel's dream was yours now too, and each effort was a seed planted in the future that she clearly visualized. The two of them walking hand in hand, he in a white coat, she in a new dress, being introduced as the woman who has been by my side from the beginning. Christmas was approaching, and Boston was gaining its icy charm. The windows glowed with red and gold ornaments, the sound of bells echoed through the narrow streets, and Emily, even exhausted, smiled. I had hope. With each light on in the city, she felt that the end of the storm was approaching. Little did she know that that Christmas glow would soon be the backdrop of her greatest pain. And it was in this climate of silent promises and frozen streets that history really began to change. The following years passed like leaves blown by the icy Boston wind. Emily no longer counted time in months, but in bills paid, books purchased, and bills that barely closed. Each beginning of the semester was a race against the clock. Registration, uniform, instruments, more books, and always one more extra. Daniel said it was necessary. And Emily, even with her eyes sunken, with fatigue, replied with a smile, "I've already transferred." She learned to live with little. He gave up the late afternoon coffees, the trips with Lily, the new clothes. Her wardrobe became a collection of shabby coats and expired shoes, but her heart still beat for something bigger. Boston was still beautiful, but its charm seemed more distant now. Emily barely saw the city, only its fragments. The snow-covered subway tracks, the end-of-day market lines, the hallways of the veterinary clinic where she begged for overtime non-stop. At night, she cared for 3 cats on Beacon Hill, cleaned Mrs. McAllister's house on Saturdays, and on Sundays she was able to take her mother for a walk in the nursing home, pushing the wheelchair with her frozen hands. All so that Daniel could study, eat well, sleep peacefully. "It will be worth it," he repeated like a mantra. But little by little, something changed. And it wasn't the world, it was Daniel. The same sweet boy who wrote romantic notes began to avoid small gestures. He stopped picking up Emily from work, even on snowy days. He forgot dates. The goodnight kiss turned into a distracted wave. And when Emily asked if she could accompany him to a college event, he hesitated. He said it was something very academic and without room for companions. Emily smiled, even with the lump in her throat. It was still too early to doubt it, he thought. Maybe it was just the stress. But the small red flags multiplied. He hid his cell phone whenever she entered the room. He said that they were messages from the teachers, that the pressure was great. It started arriving later. He exchanged sweet words for dry phrases. "I'm tired. Not now. I need to sleep." Emily tried to rationalize. "It's just a phase. Then it gets better." How many times has she repeated this to herself? How many nights have you cried on the pillow, feeling invisible inside your own home? Lily noticed the change. The sister, more sensitive, asked if everything was okay. Emily smiled, dodged, said that Daniel was overloaded. But inside, she was already beginning to feel the ice not only on the sidewalks of Boston, but inside her chest. With each excuse from him, a little piece of the faith she carried broke. And yet, she kept going. She continued to pay for his bus fare, special meals, rent for the apartment near the university, all with the money that came from the 3 jobs that barely let her breathe. There were days when Emily would come home and Daniel would already sleep. Others in which he said he was on duty to study and slept outside. She would pass in front of the university and look at the illuminated buildings, wondering where he was. He was afraid to ask, and afraid of the answer. His eyes began to lose their sparkle. Hope became routine, and routine became silence. Still, she hung her wet blouse behind the door, warmed up his favorite soup, and left an affectionate note on her desk. "Good luck on your exams. I love you." At the clinic, his colleagues began to ask if everything was okay. Emily smiled and said she was just tired. It was true, but it wasn't just physical. It was an emotional exhaustion, a feeling of being forgotten little by little, like an old painting on a too-new wall. Deep down, she felt that something was wrong. But how to admit that maybe, just maybe, it was being used? How could we accept that the one for whom she gave everything might just be waiting for the right moment to leave? And as the city prepared for another Christmas, hanging lights, music in the windows, smells of cinnamon in the air, Emily walked the ice-covered sidewalks carrying heavy bags of gifts that might not even be opened. His hands hurt, his shoulders too. But what hurt the most was the growing emptiness in my chest. And even without realizing it, something inside her began to change too. Doubt became a seed of lucidity. And what was once hope, now it began to look like an illusion. And it was in this uncomfortable silence between believing and perceiving that the first crack turned into an abyss. The 6th winter has arrived with quiet promises. Emily was counting down the days to Daniel's long-awaited graduation. She imagined everything. The auditorium was full, his name being called, the applause was excited, and she was sitting in the front row, with tears in her eyes and a smile of victory. After all, that diploma was also hers. Every penny invested, every night of sleep, every resignation, everything converged to that moment. Boston, covered in snow like a postcard, seemed to conspire for something great. Emily even bought a new, simple but elegant dress, and even booked a hairdresser. For the first time in years, she felt excited about a personal event. But then came the bucket of cold water. Daniel said he could not take her to the ceremony. He justified that the auditorium was small, that the university had limited invitations, that he needed to prioritize his mother and some colleagues. "It's nothing personal," he said. "We'll celebrate later, just the 2 of us." Emily was silent, her heart sinking. He tried to disguise his disappointment. After all, it was his big day. He didn't want to ruin it. But inside her, something broke. She watched the online broadcast at home, alone, with a glass of cheap wine in hand. When Daniel's name was announced, she whispered, "You did it." Even though she didn't hear back a "we did it." In the following days, social networks delivered what words hid. Photos and videos began to appear. There was Daniel in full costume, next to his mother, colleagues, and an unknown woman, smiling, with a burgundy dress glued to her body. None of that image matched the words of apology he gave her. No mention of Emily, no photo with her, no thanks. She clutched her phone in her hands until her fingers hurt. That wasn't just forgetting, it was erasure. For the first time, she felt like an unnecessary detail in the story she helped build. And it was in this void that Margaret Foster, the mother-in-law, entered the scene with more force. During a forced lunch of celebration at his mother-in-law's house, the coldness was palpable. Margaret served Emily last, barely looked her in the eye, and hurled in venomous remarks disguised as smiles. "It's admirable how some people can be content to stay behind the scenes." Emily didn't react. He just swallowed hard. But inside, the blood boiled. Every word was a silent thrust. She realized then that for Daniel's family, she was never part of the plan, just a temporary stepping stone. Daniel seemed oblivious. He laughed, talked, toasted. With her, he acted as if everything was normal. And when Emily tried to bring up the subject of the ceremony, he deflected. He said that she was exaggerating, that things were rushed, that she should relax more. It was there that Emily realized the definitive change. Daniel was no longer the man she had fallen in love with. He was someone she barely recognized. Arrogant, vain, distant. The white coat seemed to have erased all the memories of humility he had once carried. The shifts have begun. Daniel said that he was being requested in several hospitals. He arrived late, left early, slept in irregular shifts. Emily tried to keep the connection. She left dinners ready, loving notes, even planned a small intimate celebration at home, but he didn't even show up. He sent a short message, "Sorry, emergency at the hospital." She did not answer. He only blew out the candles and put away the cutlery. She began to notice even stranger behaviors. Different perfume on clothes, declined calls, blocked message notifications. One day, while washing Daniel's coat, he found a handwritten note. "I loved it yesterday. Let me know when I can repeat it." There was no signature. Emily's world collapsed into silence. She didn't confront it. Not yet. The pain was too great to fit into a cold discussion. She needed to understand if it was true or if it was all paranoia. But deep down, she already knew. The nights got longer. Their room, once a refuge, now looked like a borrowed place. She would lie on one side of the bed and hear the silence on the other. When Daniel was at home, he slept on the couch because he was exhausted. When he wasn't, he disappeared for hours. Emily, clinging to remnants of hope, still tried to justify. "It's the beginning of the medical career. It must be just like that." But the inner voice was already beginning to scream. He screamed that something was very wrong. She screamed that this man was no longer hers, and perhaps never had been. And it was in this silent scream that Emily's heart began to understand that sometimes the end comes without making a sound, just by not looking each other in the eye. The diploma hanging on the wall did not bring peace. On the contrary, it seemed like a visual sentence of the new distance between them. The house, once a shelter warmed by notes, simple dinners, and silly laughter, was now just the address of two strangers. Daniel woke up before the sun, left in a hurry, came back late. Sometimes, he didn't even come back. When he returned, he kept his cell phone glued to his hand, as if there was something more important there than any conversation. Emily still tried to keep the flame going. She prepared her favorite meals, put on soothing music, lit candles at dinner. But all he received was a murmured value before he went straight up to the shower. Daniel, now a doctor, was no longer the man she had known. He had become vain, distant, almost arrogant. He spoke of himself in the plural, "We, doctors. In the hospital, we don't mix." And when he referred to her, he always came with a tone of correction. "You wouldn't understand. That's something for those who are inside." Emily felt the distance growing, as if he were on a new planet, and she had no visa to enter. Some nights, he would come back with his hair too neat, his perfume striking, his gaze scattered. When Emily asked about the shift, he replied with short sentences. It was easy, very patient, boring. Nothing else was shared. The worst, perhaps, was the look. Daniel no longer looked at her as before. When they crossed in the hallway, he saw her as someone who sees an old piece of furniture that has not yet been replaced. And what hurt the most was the constant comparison with other women, always subtle, always poisonous. Today I met a brand new resident, full of energy. The doctors there are super elegant, modern. Emily listened to everything in silence, feeling the weight of her own dark circles reflected in the mirror. No matter how hard she tried to dress up, there was always a subtle comment, "That color ages you. You should try a more modern cut." Each sentence was a microneedle in the already fragile self-esteem. Lily noticed. The younger sister, always bolder, could not bear to see Emily fading away. One cold afternoon, he called her for coffee on Beacon Hill. "He's erasing you, Emily. Don't you see? This is not love, it is convenience." Emily cried for the first time off her pillow. He said he still believed that maybe it was just a phase. What if he's really tired? What if it's the stress of the hospital? Lily held her hand firmly. "Stress doesn't erase love, sister. Stress does not erase gratitude." But Emily wasn't ready to accept it yet. The contrast between the external and internal worlds was cruel. Boston was stunning. The month of December transformed the city into a magical setting. The cobblestone streets glistened with fresh snow. Storefronts displayed shimmering trees. Bells rang in the distance. Couples walked hand in hand in long coats. And Emily, she watched everything from the window, alone, with a cold cup of tea forgotten in her hand. Indoors, Christmas seemed suspended. The box of ornaments sat in the closet for days. When she finally decided to set up the tree, she did so alone, with an old radio playing holiday songs that sounded like mockery. Still, she tried. He bought Daniel a beautiful gift, a watch engraved with the phrase, "For our years and for those to come." He spent more than he could. Put it in a red box with a golden bow. He prepared dinner with the dishes he loved. Made pumpkin pie, puree with nutmeg, roast turkey with orange. He poured wine into the glass. Waited, waited, waited. He arrived after 10. No flowers. Without looking, he said, "Today it was pulled. I'm going to take a shower." Emily held out the box. He hesitated. "I'll see that later, okay?" He went up the stairs, without opening. She stood there, with the noose still between her fingers. She lay down that night without tears. His body trembled, but his eyes were dry. There was something worse than crying. It was emptiness. It was knowing and not wanting to accept. It was the weight of a promise broken not with words, but with absence. She turned over on the bed and saw his side untouched. And, he thought, maybe I'm sleeping with a ghost. But ghosts don't leave someone else's perfume on the sheet. And there, for the first time, Emily felt that the end might be closer than she had ever dared to imagine. And it was with this silence, between a lighted tree and a cold bed, that Christmas Eve arrived. Christmas Eve morning arrived with white skies and the muffled sound of church bells echoing through the snow-covered streets. Emily woke up early, as she did every year, determined to transform the cold weather into human warmth. For the first time in weeks, she tried to ignore Daniel's signs of distancing and focus on creating a memorable night. There is still time. It's still Christmas, she whispered to herself as she lit the first candle in the kitchen. He put on his old red reindeer sweater, a gift from his sister, and turned on the traditional soundtrack. Frank Sinatra packing the preparations for supper. She cleaned every corner of the house as if she were also cleansing the heart. She spent hours decorating the tree, hanging the same flashing lights they had used since the second year of dating. He placed small cards with phrases of gratitude hanging between the branches. She prepared a complete dinner with Daniel's favorite dishes, including the caramelized garlic puree and the cheese soufflé that only she knew how to make. He scattered scented candles, lit the oven, and put on an instrumental jazz in the background. The house, heated and bright, was an absolute contrast to the biting winter outside. With each passing minute, the anxiety increased. Daniel had said that he would leave the hospital early that day. Emily looked at her watch as if counting heartbeats. He changed twice, reviewed the gift wrapping, put a handwritten note with the phrase, "I still believe in us," At 7 in the evening, supper was already set. At 8, she sent a message. Everything is ready. Come soon. At 9, he called. No answer. At 10, he heard footsteps on the sidewalk. His heart raced. Daniel entered with light steps, wearing a crumpled coat, his eyes tired. Or would they be relieved? Emily tried to smile, but something about him was strange. He took off his coat slowly, as if dragging the moment. "You've arrived," she said in a voice between hope and doubt. He nodded, glanced quickly at the table set, and murmured, "It's pretty." Emily pulled up her chair, excited. "Let's eat, it's all hot." But he hesitated, looked around as if looking for an invisible way out. I need to tell you something first." She froze. The bells continued to ring in the background. The sail fluttered. "Now?" he asked, trying to keep his smile. Daniel looked away. "It's important." He sat down at the table, but didn't touch anything. He took an envelope out of his coat pocket and placed it on the towel embroidered by Emily years earlier. "What is this?" she asked in a choked voice. "Then we eat. Just read." The soundtrack that once rocked the night now seemed to mock the silence. Emily picked up the envelope, still not understanding. "Daniel, it's Christmas." He took a deep breath, his eyes moist but cold. "That's why. I couldn't keep pretending." Emily opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The bold title at the top of the page took his breath away. Petition for Divorce, State of Massachusetts. For a second, she thought it was a mistake, a cruel prank. But his look was serious. He said, "I've changed, Emily. We have changed. I don't hate you. I never hated you. But we are no longer compatible." Emily's world came to a standstill. The sound of the bells, the lights of the tree, the smell of the oven, it all turned into a confusing blur. "You're amazing, but we're in different phases now." The phrase hit like a punch. She tried to answer, but her throat froze. Daniel continued, "I'm with someone else. It's been a while. It's someone from the hospital. And she's pregnant." Emily felt her legs give way. He had to hold on to his chair. "I want to leave home today. I've already organized everything." He stood up calmly, as if he had just paid a bill. Emily looked around, seeing the house she had so lovingly prepared turn into a scene of humiliation. He picked up his coat, walked to the door, and said, "I'm sorry for doing that today. But it was no longer possible." Left. Is that it? No scene. No scandal. It just left. The door slammed softly. Emily stood there, envelope in hand, the gift on the table, and the sound of the fireplace crackling in the background. The tree blinked as if mocking her hope, and the lights reflected in Emily's teary eyes were now just mirrors of a pain she never imagined she would feel on the most magical night of the year. And while snowflakes covered the world outside, inside, something about Emily was beginning to collapse, and there would be no turning back. The envelope was still on the table when Emily breathed again. For long minutes, she simply stood there, paralyzed, as if time had frozen along with the snow outside. The lights on the tree kept flashing mechanically, and Christmas music kept playing on the radio, as if mocking the pain on his face. She looked again at the paper, now half crumpled between her fingers. The words were cold, bureaucratic, but the impact was an emotional bombshell. Petition for Divorce, State of Massachusetts. A document with dates, stamps, legal paragraphs. But that, for her, said only one thing: you were discarded. She dropped her body on the chair, trying to control her breathing. "This is not happening," he murmured. But it was. The supper was cooling on the table. The gift she had chosen with so much affection still remained closed, ignored. The note he had written, "I still believe in us. now seemed like a cruel irony. The wall clock was almost midnight. Emily felt like she was inside a nightmare, but everything around her was too real. The smell of roast turkey, the icy breeze that came in through the crack in the barely closed door, the empty chair where Daniel used to sit. She staggered to her feet and walked into the living room, as if trying to escape the weight of that table. But nothing helped. Wherever he looked, he saw memories. The ornament they bought together on the first Christmas. The blanket on the couch he used when he pretended to sleep during fights. The picture frame with a smiling photo of the two in Vermont 3 years ago. She picked it up, stared for a few seconds, and let him fall to the ground. The glass broke, and that high-pitched sound was the only thing that seemed to wake her from her trance. Emily finally began to cry. Not a suppressed cry, but a visceral cry of someone who holds the world on his back for years. And suddenly, it collapses. Between sobs, she reread Daniel's note. "I've changed. We are no longer compatible." The coldness of the sentence cut through her inside. Compatibility, as if a marriage of years could be reduced to a comparison of lifestyles. And then came the final blow. He was with another woman, a resident doctor, young, probably beautiful, intelligent, pregnant. Emily felt her stomach turn. "Pregnant," she whispered. That word echoed through the house like a funeral bell. It was the beginning of another family, another story, and she had been replaced before she even knew she was being left. The image of him saying, "I want to leave the house today," repeated itself in her mind like a needle piercing the same spot. He had already planned everything, every detail. And even so, he let her prepare the supper, set up the tree, light the candles, as if it were an emotional endurance test. Emily looked at herself in the hallway mirror. The pale face, the red eyes, the smudged makeup. "What's left of me?" he thought. She no longer recognized that woman. He had given it his all: money, time, youth, health, love, and in return, he had received an envelope for Christmas. He climbed the stairs slowly, holding the railing as if supporting his own pieces. He entered the room. The side of the bed where he slept was perfectly arranged. He took the watch he had bought for him and, without thinking twice, threw it in the trash can. Then she took off the red dress she had chosen so carefully and put on the old sweatshirt she wore on cleaning days. He needed to strip himself not only of his clothes, but of illusion. She lay down, hugging the pillow that still had his smell. And for the first time in years, he slept without praying. Because, at that moment, even his faith seemed to have been betrayed. The next day, she was awakened by a deafening silence. No message, no link, no noise. Just the snow falling softly outside. The city was still celebrating, but inside that house, there was mourning. And it wasn't for a physical death. It was the death of a love, of a cycle, of a woman who was buried alive within her own marriage. Emily stood up slowly. I needed to tell someone. I needed to breathe. But first, she needed to gather what was left of herself and decide, it would be buried with that envelope, or would it be reborn from there? And it was with this doubt, painful and necessary, that Emily faced the new day, a day that would bring no gifts, but perhaps truth. The next morning, Boston dawned white, covered in a thick layer of freshly fallen snow. The streets, silent and serene, contrasted brutally with the chaos that engulfed the interior of Emily's house. The table of supper was still set, the dishes now cold and forgotten. The divorce note remained on the embroidered towel, as if it had frozen time. Emily went down the stairs slowly, without energy. Each step was like crossing an emotional minefield. Her eyes burned, not only from the crying of the night before, but from the invisible weight of disappointment. The house was empty, of a new emptiness. an emptiness that was not only physical, but symbolic. The echo of her own footsteps seemed to mock her. Daniel had not returned. He left no message. He did not write a message. As if the 6 years of sacrifice could be erased with a simple disappearance. Emily opened the living room window and watched the quiet street, the neighbors greeting each other with Christmas hugs, the smiles on the children's faces, the gift packages being delivered. Everything was going on normally, less within it. Their time had stopped. It was at that moment that the doorbell rang. Emily, still in sweatpants, messy hair and a swollen face, opened the door to find Lily, her sister, panting, her cheeks red from the cold. "I came as soon as I knew," she said, without waiting for an invitation. He entered and hugged Emily as if trying to hold a soul in pieces. Emily collapsed right there, in the hallway. He fell to his knees, sobbing like a child who has lost his ground. "He left me, Lily, on Christmas Eve, with another. And she's pregnant." Lily's hug tightened tighter. No words would be enough, so she just stood there, present. 4 hours, they sat on the living room floor. Emily told everything, between pauses and tears. From the first signs, through the silences, the excuses, the coldness. Lily listened attentively, holding her sister's hand as if that would prevent her from disintegrating for good. And at one point, Emily said, in a low voice, "How come I didn't see it? How could I not see?" This question echoed through the room, hitting the walls, the memories, and especially in consciousness. Because deep down she knew. I always knew. But he didn't want to accept it. The day passed slowly. Emily didn't eat. He didn't change. She just sat on the couch, staring into space, as the snowflakes continued to fall out of the window. In her mind, flashbacks began to emerge as unintentional projections. Her signing tuition checks, working double, washing his uniforms by hand, listening to his stories about how she inspired him. All of this now looked like a theater set up to keep the lights on while he built another stage. With each memory, a piece of it broke more. At the end of the afternoon, Lily suggested leaving the house, getting some air, walking a little. Emily refused. She said she didn't want to be seen. "I'm embarrassed," she murmured. But Lily looked steady. "You're not the mistake, Emily. You were the light." He erased everything. "But your flame is still there. It's just hidden." Emily didn't answer. He just closed his eyes and let the tears flow once more. The pain was still too strong. It was as if every cell in the body screamed for loss, for injustice, for abandonment. That night, Emily lay in bed with the lights off and the window ajar. The icy wind that came in seemed to punish her, but it also kept her awake. She stared at the ceiling, motionless, listening to the sound of the city in celebration in the background. Somewhere, Daniel might have been smiling, celebrating, touching a new woman's belly. And she, alone, with the gift still wrapped on the table, tried to understand how her love had become disposable, like a used and forgotten object. But it was on this freezing dawn that, for the first time, Emily noticed something different. A subtle anger began to mix with the pain. A spark of indignation. As if your own body says, "This can't be the end." She was small, shy, but real. A seed of lucidity sprouting among the emotional rubble. And although she was still far from getting back on her feet, at that moment, between silence, cold, and darkness, the first question that would change everything was born. What if I start with myself? And it was with this spark hidden in the midst of the devastation that Emily fell asleep, unknowingly, that its revival had already begun. 2 days after Christmas, still shrouded in silence and pain, Emily received an unexpected visitor. Ethan Walsh, a childhood friend, now a renowned lawyer in Boston. Lily had contacted him without warning. "You need someone who really defends you," she said. Emily resisted at first, still too shaken to deal with legal issues. But Ethan insisted. Always gentle, always discreet. He appeared with a briefcase under his arm and a mixed look of concern and firmness. They sat down in the living room, the same room where Emily had collapsed days before, and Ethan began to ask questions. When he left home, did he leave anything other than filing for divorce? Asked Ethan. Emily showed the documents she had received. He read them carefully, flipping through them slowly, as if looking for something specific. And he did. This protocol. It was not issued last week, as he said. It was filed 3 months ago. Emily widened her eyes. 3 months. But at that time he still slept here. He said he loved me. Ethan nodded, his eyes serious. Emily, he was already planning to leave you, and with enough time to set up a clean exit. With each new page, more revelations emerged. Ethan found evidence of suspicious bank transactions. Money that had been transferred from the joint account to a personal account of Daniel, and that dated back even before graduation. Do you remember this transfer? He asked. Emily shook her head. These accounts were automatic. I just paid. I didn't even question it anymore. It was at this point that Ethan touched on an even more sensitive subject. You had a small inheritance from your grandmother, right? Emily confirmed. I used part of it to pay for his last semester. But Ethan shook his head. He used more than you think. The inheritance was linked to an investment, and he asked for total withdrawal without her consent. He used an old power of attorney that you signed when he entered college. The ground seemed to come out from under Emily's feet. It wasn't just abandonment. It was exploitation. She had been used, financially and emotionally. Every extra hour, every purchase set aside, every lonely night now gained a new layer of meaning. Not sacrifice, but manipulation. Ethan continued. He knew exactly what he was doing, and more. The name of his new partner, the resident doctor? It is already linked to it in shared address records. 2 months ago. Emily didn't know what hurt more, knowing that he was with someone else while still sleeping next to her, or knowing that this other was pregnant and living with the money she sweated to earn. An indignation began to grow in his chest. So all of this, was it planned? Ethan didn't answer with words. He only delivered one more document. Read it yourself. It was a printed email, which Ethan had obtained through legal means. A conversation between Daniel and a broker. In it, Daniel spoke openly about his post-college life plan and mentioned detaching himself from past ties that no longer make sense in the new cycle. Emily felt nauseous. He referred to marriage itself as an outdated bond. Like someone who changes clothes. Like someone who changes seasons. She clutched the paper in her hands and felt an anger she had never felt before. Not only for him, but by itself. For having believed, for having given himself, for having ignored the signs. But Ethan didn't stop there. He will probably try to speed up the process. And if you don't protect yourself now, you could end up with nothing. But I can help. I can put together a financial compensation process based on the years of emotional, financial, and marital support you've provided. Emily looked at him with teary eyes, but now there was something different about them. A glow. A spark. For the first time, she felt that she was not alone. And that maybe it was possible to turn this game around. She thanked Ethan, squeezed his hand tightly, and said, I don't want revenge, but I'm not going to be the woman who is silent either. And at that moment, even between papers that hurt like daggers, something new was born in Emily. The desire for justice. Not only for her, but for all who have been treated as stepping stones on the path of ambitious men. And it was with this new, silent, growing strength that Emily took the first step. Not to rebuild what was broken, but to start something that would finally be hers alone. In the days following Ethan's visit, Emily experienced a kind of silent grief. But unlike the emotional breakdown of Christmas, there was now something new pulsing within her: clarity. The pain was still there, but it no longer paralyzed her. She started to get out of bed a little earlier, to open the windows without fear of the cold, to organize the house as if exorcising memories. He took the couple's picture frames, old cards, mugs out of the room. He put everything in a box, and it wasn't a sad farewell. It was a decision. He took what he wanted. But what do I reconquer now? It will be mine alone, she whispered to herself in a firm voice. Lily noticed the difference immediately. His sister, always present, continued to be his most faithful support. But now, it was Emily who took the reins. He began attending therapy sessions, initially reluctantly, but soon allowed himself to immerse himself in the process. He discovered pains that had been there since before Daniel. Old wounds, patterns he repeated without realizing it, and a tendency to put the needs of others above his own. "Why do I always think I'm stronger than I really am?" she confessed in one of the first sessions. And the therapist's answer was direct: "Because no one has ever taken care of you like you take care of others." These words echoed in his mind for days, and it was on them that she relied to take the next step, taking care of herself. It started slowly. He began to walk through the old neighborhoods of Boston that he loved so much, but that he had stopped frequenting. He rediscovered hidden coffee shops, bookstores with the smell of wood and old pages, flower shops with end-of-season promotions. One day, while passing by an art supply store, she stopped at the window and stood there, hypnotized by the tubes of paint. Entered. He bought 3 colors. At home, he cleaned a space in Daniel's old office, transforming it into a studio. "That place is now mine," she said aloud, alone and free. Painting became an outlet and at the same time a rediscovery. It was something he loved in his youth, but had put aside the responsibilities of adulthood. Now, each screen was a confession. He painted pains, memories, silent outbursts. He didn't worry about technique, only about expression. And it was there, between brushes and splashes of color, that Emily began to find herself again. A whole woman. A woman who no longer needed someone to justify her existence. Meanwhile, Ethan has kept close. He helped with the legal process, yes, but he also became a companion in her rebirth. She brought books that could inspire her, movies that provoked laughter, texts that touched the soul. He never crossed the line, never forced approximation. But his presence was solid. Emily began to see him with different eyes. Not romantic, not yet, but the eyes of those who recognize who stayed when everyone else left. And that, in itself, meant a lot. During one of the therapy sessions, the psychologist proposed an exercise: write a letter to yourself, as if you were consoling a friend. Emily hesitated, but wrote. And in the end, he realized something revealing. By treating herself with kindness, she discovered how much she had judged herself unfairly for so long. "I blamed myself for believing, when, in fact, believing was my greatest act of courage." From that day on, she promised, she would never put someone first again if it meant losing herself. Winter was still harsh in Boston, with biting winds and short days. But inside Emily, something flourished. Small, yes. Frail, but real. She started accepting invitations from friends, went back to wearing lipstick, bought a new dress. Laugh at silly jokes. She danced alone in the kitchen. And more importantly, he looked in the mirror and said, "You survived." It was the beginning of something bigger. Something that did not involve a man, a relationship, or an external validation. It was just her, being finally whole. And it was in this climate of silent reconstruction that Emily decided it was not enough to move forward. She would do it with her head held high, with dignity and justice. Because who was forgotten? Now she would remind the whole world who she always was. As winter progressed in Boston with its biting gusts and frozen streets, inside Emily's house, the mood began to change. Not because the pain had passed, it was still there, latent, alive, but because Emily now used it as fuel. With each page of the process read, with each document revised, with each detail discovered with Ethan's help, a transforming indignation grew in her. Divorce was no longer just the end of a marriage. It was the fuse of a silent war she was ready to fight. And this time, for the first time in years, she would be on her own side. The first action he took was to gather all the receipts he still kept. Boxes of invoices, bank statements, college tuition receipts, rent receipts, transfers made over the 6 years he supported Daniel. It was a complete dossier of sacrifice. With Ethan's help, she organized everything in chronological order. And when she saw that pile of papers piled up on the table, Emily felt, for the first time in a long time, that she had a voice. That he had proof. That had history. And that this story needed to be recognized legally, even if it wasn't emotionally. Daniel, on the other hand, reacted as expected. He tried to discredit Emily in the process. He claimed that there was no formal agreement, that she helped of her own volition, that she was not responsible for reimbursing sacrifices that, according to him, are part of married life. But what he didn't count on was the level of detail that Emily would present. Ethan prepared a surgical petition, based not only on numbers, but on emotional narrative and documentary evidence. Testimonies from friends, Daniel's former co-workers who knew she paid for everything, as well as a former college classmate who testified that, without Emily, he wouldn't have even gotten into that course. The court received the case and, as planned, scheduled a conciliation hearing. On the day of the hearing, Emily arrived early. He wore a simple but elegant navy blue coat. Hair tied up, clean face, upright posture. Ethan next to her, serene. On the other side of the room, Daniel, nervous, next to a lawyer visibly uncomfortable with the documents he received in advance. When the judge read the volume of evidence and the timeline presented, his expression changed. Emily, in silence, just watched. He no longer cried. He was no longer trembling. It wasn't about emotions anymore. It was about respect. During the testimony, Emily was firm. There were no exaggerations. Just the naked truth. For 6 years, I paid for everything. I slept 3 hours a night, cleaned, put aside my health, my youth, my peace. I'm not here for money. I'm here because my history won't be erased. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the referee paused for a long time before speaking. Rarely have I seen such a well-documented case of ignored spousal support. You are entitled not only to compensation, but to recognition. Words did not erase the pain, but they validated the fight. The sentence was clear. Daniel should compensate Emily for moral and financial damages. The stipulated amount included all the years of support, adjusted with interest, in addition to part of the current assets that he had built using, directly or indirectly, her resources. The court also authorized an investigation into the movement of the joint accounts, which could lead to further penalties. Daniel left the hearing visibly shaken. For the first time, he seemed to have understood that the fresh start he wanted would come with outstanding bills, and that Emily was no longer the silent woman who let it all go. But it was not only in court that justice appeared. The news of the lawsuit spread among colleagues, friends, and even in the hospital where Daniel worked. He started to be seen with different eyes. The image of a man of integrity and effort began to crumble, and the residence that he had so much boasted as promising was now filled with crossed looks and whispers from corridors. Emily, on the other hand, began to be sought out by other women. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers, who saw themselves in her story. Some cried when they reported that they had also been erased. Others just thanked her for having had the courage. This new phase, curiously, did not bring the feeling of victory that many expected. Emily didn't feel triumphant. She felt at peace. He knew that no amount of money would make back the years lost, the faith betrayed, the innocence sacrificed. But I also knew that justice was not about revenge. It was about balance. And now, for the first time in a long time, I felt that things were getting back in the right place. In court, in the city, and within it. With part of the financial compensation received, Emily decided not to spend on luxuries. She invested in a small creative co-working space, where she rented a room to sell her paintings and hold therapeutic workshops for women who have been in abusive, toxic, or neglectful relationships. He called the project Scars That Paint. It was the beginning of something greater, something that was born not of pain, but of rebirth. And every time she walked into that room, with the smell of paint and female voices exchanging experiences, Emily was sure she would never have gotten there if she hadn't been betrayed. And it was with this certainty that even the ruins can be foundations that she continued walking through the icy streets of Boston, this time with her head held high, her soul in order, and justice in his name. The calendar marked December 24th again. A year had passed since the night Emily held, with trembling hands, the envelope that turned her life upside down. The city of Boston followed its traditional ritual. Decorated window displays, Christmas music playing from speakers in the streets, snow piling up on rooftops, and the familiar smells of cinnamon, hot chocolate, and pine in the air. But inside Emily's house, now simpler, smaller, but welcoming, the spirit was different. There was no luxury, but there was peace. And that, after all, was a luxury that no money in the world could buy. She woke up early, but without haste. He made mint tea, turned on the radio at low volume, and watched the snow fall through the window of the new living room. The Christmas tree was set up in the corner, decorated with balls in shades of blue and gold. His favorite colors, not the ones Daniel always chose. Above it was a small handwritten board. My home, my rules, my peace. Emily smiled as she read. It was a silent reminder that she had won. Not in the sense of having defeated someone, but for having survived herself. For having rebuilt himself with his own hands. Lily arrived soon after, carrying 2 cakes, 1 apple, 1 spice, and a gift wrapped in recycled paper with a red bow. They embraced each other as if they were meeting again after a long crossing. "I'm so proud of you," Lily said. Emily just smiled, moved. During that year, they had become more than sisters. They were now accomplices in a healing journey. They sat on the sofa, reminisced about the follies of childhood, the old Christmases, the first clues of betrayal. But now, everything sounded distant, like a story told by someone else. In the afternoon, friends began to arrive. Some were ancient faces. Others, new people he had met in support groups, in therapy or in painting workshops. They brought food, music, and stories. The house was filled with light laughter, heartfelt conversations, and long hugs. Emily no longer had to pretend she was okay, because, in fact, she was. The dinner was simple but packed with meaning. There were dishes prepared by several hands, and each one of them brought an effective memory. A kind of collective reconstruction, where each guest left a piece of themselves there, and took a piece of Emily back. Ethan appeared later. He brought a small, well-wrapped gift and a look that said it all. Since the court case, the two had been getting closer naturally. There was no hurry, there was no charge. But there was care. Care in gestures, words, shared silences. They sat together on the porch, watching the snow fall, the lights reflecting off the flakes like small mirrors of the past. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Emily took a deep breath. "Whole. For the first time in many years, I feel whole." Ethan smiled. "This is already the best gift." It was then that the doorbell rang. A sudden silence took over the room. Emily got up slowly, crossed the hallway, and opened the door. Outside, standing under the snow, was Daniel. The same man, but different. Downcast look, worn coat, lost countenance. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, hesitantly. Emily didn't answer right away. He just observed it. "Things didn't turn out as I expected," he began. "With the resident. Finished. And I realized how wrong I was with you." Old Emily might have cried. Maybe he had shaken himself. But the new, he just breathed. "Daniel," she said firmly and serenely, "I don't finance anyone else. Not even dreams. Nor lies. And no late regrets." He opened his mouth to answer, but she had already closed the door. On the other side, a room full of people who loved her waited. And that was all she needed. He came back calmly, sat down at the table, toasted with Lily and Ethan. "Second chances. The ones we give ourselves." Everyone smiled and toasted with her. That night, there was no sadness. There was liberation. The Emily who one day cried in front of a Christmas tree because of an envelope. Now he was smiling next to a tree decorated with new memories, surrounded by real people. She had transformed. And now, he knew exactly who he was, and what he deserved. And it was in this restrained but full smile that Emily ended a cycle, not of pain, but of rebirth. If someone asked Emily today what was the worst and best moment of her life, she would answer with a single date: Christmas the year before. Because it was there that everything fell apart, and exactly there that the seed of reconstruction was planted. Not by choice, but by necessity. Because when you're left in the dark, you have two options: either hide or learn to turn on your own light. Emily chose the second. And in the process, she discovered something that romantic love never taught her: the freedom to be her own home. Over the course of 12 months, she learned that loving someone doesn't mean abandoning yourself. That sustaining a dream for two cannot mean paying for the beams of the structure alone. And more than that, she learned the difference between being kind and being naive. For a long time, he confused generosity with submission. She thought that supporting the other was a sign of strength, when in fact, it was a veiled request to be chosen back. But no one remains where they are not seen, and no one flourishes where only one waters the soil. It was necessary to be abandoned to understand that the only root that cannot die is the one that has been planted within itself. In therapy, in workshops, in silent conversations with a mirror, Emily discovered that she had spent her life trying to be needed by others, when what she needed most was to be essential to herself. He discovered that there was no virtue in enduring the unbearable. That enduring too much is often an act of self-violence. And that patience, without reciprocity, turns into prison. Freedom, she learned, comes when you look in the mirror and decide that you will no longer beg for a place where you can only fit as a servant. Daniel taught her many things, not with words, but with absences. It showed that love can become a bargaining chip, that promises are easy when made in times of scarcity, and that not every "I love you" comes from a true place. But it was, paradoxically, he who offered the biggest lesson, that rock bottom is often the most fertile place to start from scratch. Because from then on, everything is choice. And Emily chose to live, but by her own side. Today, she looks back with no desire for revenge. When you think of him, you no longer feel hatred. He feels sorry. Sorry for someone who lived with a whole woman and still chose a fantasy. Sorry for those who thought they could use someone and get out unscathed. Sorry for those who will never know what it feels like to sleep peacefully next to someone who gave you everything without asking for anything in return. Until the day you decided to give yourself everything, finally. She learned to say no. Setting limits. Not to accept half of presents when offering full presents. Celebrating small achievements, like the day she woke up without remembering him, or the day she smiled as she passed by the street where they were happy. He learned the importance of solitude, silence, self-responsibility. And, above all, he learned to look inside without fear of what he will find. The woman who today walks the icy streets of Boston in a blue coat and a suppressed smile is not the same one who was abandoned in front of a supper. That one was buried, and in its place, someone stronger was born. Someone who no longer needs to prove value. That doesn't need an audience to exist. That she doesn't need to be saved, because she discovered that she always had wings. They just didn't know that she knew how to fly. And if you've come this far and you've already given your all to someone, sacrificed himself, waited, believed, and yet he was left with an envelope, a slammed door, or a deafening silence. So this story is yours too. Not as a mirror of pain, but as a mirror of the way out. Because what hurt you may be what will shape you. And what broke you, it may be exactly what will reveal your most powerful form. You are not alone. And its rebirth can begin right here. Emily Carter didn't win because she turned it around. She won because, after being left in pieces, she had the courage to pick up every shard and remake himself differently. She did not rebuild what she lost. She built something new, with her own feet, with her own hands, with her own heart. And if today she walks confidently through the streets of Boston, it's not because they forgot what they did to her, but because she remembered who she always was. What about you? How far has it been reduced to fit into someone's life? How many times have you sacrificed yourself thinking that this was proof of love? How many promises have you been left waiting in an empty supper, in a cold room, on a morning of loneliness? If you have already given everything and received the absence, know that this story was made for you, not to entertain you, to wake you up. What happened to Emily can happen to anyone who loves the other more than themselves. But what did she do next? That's choice. It's a decision. It is an act of courage. And you can too. Even wounded, even betrayed, even on the ground. Because there is no pain strong enough to keep you from being born again, if you decide you deserve it. Now, I want to tease you. How many times have you stayed after realizing they were gone? How many times have you paid with your peace the price of someone's company? How many versions of you died silently to keep alive a relationship that was already rotten? What if today was the first day of your rebirth? If this story really touched you, comment below, "My new beginning begins now." I want to read you. I want to feel your strength. I want to know that you also decided to choose yourself. And if you know someone who needs to hear that story, send. It may be that this sharing saves more than one Christmas. It may save a whole life. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with those who need to remember that self-love is the only one that never abandons. Because between being forgotten and remember who you are, I hope you choose the second option. Always.